Your favorite president, Joe "We Beat Big Pharma" Biden, has appointed a new chief of staff. But Joe, best president ever for the unions, Biden, surely wouldn't appoint someone as chief of staff that's earned a $440 million fortune by investing in healthcare companies accused of defrauding the American public and benefiting from their sickness, would he? Yes. Hello there, you 6 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom, a voyage that will not be aided by an alliance with the mainstream media and big tech giants who want to feed you the filthy slops of propaganda that keeps you dopey, distracted, hopeless and rancid of thought. We want to illuminate you with truth as best we understand it. We welcome your feedback in the comments below. Turn on the notification bell so that we can let you know when we make our daily content. Today's story is a classic story about revolving doors in power, corruption, unaccountability, deception, and piety. Joe Biden has appointed a new chief of staff whose name rhymes with science. So let's follow the science and see how the mainstream media reported on this rather contentious and convenient appointment.
President Biden is expected to welcome his second chief of staff in the coming weeks. Jeff Zients is set to replace Klain.
Jeff Zients will step in as chief of staff.
Zients is Biden administration's former COVID-19 policy czar.
Let's just cover some of the basics so we know what we're dealing with. The chief of staff is the most senior political appointee in the White House. The position is widely recognized as one of great power and influence, owing to daily contact with the President of the United States and control of the executive office of the President of the United States. So it's a significant and influential role. So the person you appoint is going to reveal a great deal about the way you regard government, the way you regard profit, the way you regard transparency, clarity, open comms, unity, all the things, all the top line subjects that the White House and Biden in particular are keen to amplify and elevate within their messaging. Let's have a look at Zients, or Ziente, or whatever he's called, speaking alongside Walensky and Fauci during the pandemic.
To the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death. For yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm.
Merry Christmas. Let's just hope that that's absolutely true and that none of the data implied within that outrageous, pious, haughty and damning statement has proven to be untrue and in real need of updating. Going live now to our correspondent on vaccines, Mr. Bill Gates.
The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection, and they have very short duration.
Watch out, Bill. That sounded like misinformation to me. Beyond the pandemic, what interests us about Jeff Zients, or Ziente, is his relationship with the corporate world, because surely Biden, at this point in his presidency, will be wanting to crush any idea, any rumors, any sense that the political establishment and the corporate world are in lockstep in the pursuit of power, domination, control of narratives, and the pursuit of more profits. Progressive watchdogs have pointed to Ziente's or Zients' disastrous tenure as the administration's coronavirus czar, as well as his history in the corporate world, where he built a fortune investing in healthcare companies accused of fraud. One of the things we want from Joe Biden, after he said we beat Big Pharma this year,
we beat Pharma this year,
is for pharmaceutical companies to behave more responsibly. We recognize that in what we call late capitalism or corporatism or whatever you want to call this bizarre scenario where elites, both governmental and corporate, align to ensure that power can never be disrupted, we recognize that profit is part of that story. But appointing this person demonstrates how power operates in ways that are extraordinary. Americans are appalled by profiteering in healthcare. Jeff Zientes has become astonishingly rich by profiteering in healthcare, said Revolving Door Project Executive Director Jeff Hauser. But at least he's only involved in potentially fraudulent healthcare companies. It's not as if he's got a history of being on the board of big tech giants that cooperated with surveillance of citizens in a way that was clandestine. Americans are aghast at how social media companies have built monopolies and violated privacy laws. Zientes served on the board of directors of Facebook as it was defending itself against growing attacks from both political parties. This is a significant political appointment. This is a defining appointment. How can we not come to the conclusion that big tech, big pharma, for-profit healthcare, and the White House collude with one another? How can we claim even for a moment that this government is interested in representing you, your needs, your concerns? Unless, I don't know, maybe let me clarify. Are your concerns things like this? Honey, I'm just off to be on the board at Facebook to discuss how much we should should censor and control the information around coronavirus. But as you know, straight after that, I'll be off to some of the healthcare companies that I'm heavily invested in to talk about healthcare products and how they should be promoted and controlled and how information around them should be censored. Also, you know I'm the czar when it comes to talking about the pandemic, so luckily I've not got any connections to healthcare companies that have been investigated for fraud. How can Joe Biden present himself as an shucks, honest to God, made in the American soil, corn pop fighting president of the people when his alliances are corporate alliances? They're big tech, big business, big pharma. How can he stand on a stage claiming to have beat Big Pharma this year when appointments like this are regularly made? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you are a centrist, liberal, Democrat type person, how you can maintain your enthusiasm for government of this nature. What is it you point to say that this is a good thing, that this is an advance, that this is an evolution? How is it that you can be baffled about the emergence of new political rhetoric, new movements within politics, when this is what the mainstream, centrist, authoritarian state offers us? Zientes, who was replaced as COVID-19 response coordinator back in April, has controlled, invested in, and helped oversee healthcare companies that were forced to pay tens of millions of dollars to settle allegations of Medicare and Medicaid fraud. The nature of that statement means it's impossible to say that they're guilty of anything. But when you're appointing someone for a government position, a chief of staff, wouldn't you rather that they hadn't ever profited from a company that had to settle allegations for Medicare and Medicaid fraud? Is this the kind of appointment that legitimizes the condemnation of independent media as conspiracy theorists? Is this the kind of appointment that makes you think they should have the power to censor the debate in public forums such as Twitter? Is this the kind of appointment that makes you think that they ought be trusted instead of new, emergent political ideas and forces? Does this make you feel, I trust Joe Biden, I trust the White House, I trust the Democrat Party? Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments. They have also been accused of surprise billing practices and even medical malpractice. Oh dear. Can't even imagine what surprise billing practices are. Oh well, that was a reasonable price to pay for that operation and for those drugs. Surprise! It's actually a lot more fucking money and that operation didn't work. Taken together, an examination of the companies that made Zientes rich paints a picture of a man who seized on medical providers as a way to capitalize on the suffering of sick Americans. In the end, it seems to have all paid off. So this is not the kind of politician, the kind of leadership that America and indeed the world are craving. This is the kind of cronyism, corporatism, profiteering, and dare I say it, corruption that we fear, that people are crying out for a change to. This is what people, whether you see yourself as Republican or Democrat, left or right, progressive or traditional, none of us want this kind of appointment. Who in the world, other than Zientes' family and people that enjoy the idea that if you say his name as it's written, it rhymes with science, could possibly be happy about this appointment? And the Zientes-led COVID response refused to challenge Big Pharma's monopoly control in the US and globally over technologies that relied crucially on public support. During his time as pandemic response coordinator, Zientes was far and away the wealthiest member of Biden's cabinet, disclosing assets worth as much as $442.8 million. Again, when we're talking about how the world could change, even if you're talking only about reform rather than revolution, which obviously is what I believe is required, although I recognize that revolution comes with destabilization and often suffering. When you're just talking about reform, getting money out of politics, not having politicians that have that amount of wealth, how much would the field change if people that were in Congress or high-powered political positions such as Chief of Staff had to give away all of their wealth? They wouldn't do it, would they? So you'd get a different class of people. You'd get people that were more the attitude of like crossing guards and nurses and teachers and doctors. And the idea that what you require is elites, that somehow there are a class of people that are better than you, that know things you don't know, that's part of the problem. Every time there's a revelation like the Hunter Biden laptop, what are we confronted with? They're just like us. They've got kids that mess up. They do favors for their family to help them make their way in life. All things that in other areas of life might not be considered the end of the world. They have addiction issues. They have issues around their sexuality. They have all the challenges that human beings come with. So if you're going to create systems, let's recognize human frailty, not build systems that celebrate greed, celebrate selfishness, encourage censorship and centralization of power, and a lack of transparency and accountability. Otherwise, what you will generate is the worst possible scenario for government. And I believe that is what we have. In other ways that Joe Biden beat Big Pharma this year, a growing number of Americans are delaying important medical care because of the high cost of treatment, a new survey shows. We beat Big Pharma this year. In 2022, 2022, 38% of Americans said they or a family member skipped or delayed medical care, according to an annual healthcare poll from Gallup. People are enduring illness because they can't afford to do otherwise.
We beat Pharma this year.
That is not the progress we are being sold or told that we're enjoying. This is not like a minority problem. I don't mean in terms of ethnicity or culture. I mean in terms of demographics. I mean in terms of swathes. 40% of Americans have suffered as a result of this. That's more than voted for Joe Biden. Significantly more, I imagine. So what kind of regard do you have for the American people if you appoint someone who profited from healthcare companies accused of causing that exact problem? What does that mean, you think, about the American people? What does it mean, you think? You can say all day long, well, in my neighborhood, when we was kids, we used to settle this with a duster. Boy, it's like my brother and my family. I'm just like you. No, you're not just like us. Because we are not appointing a chief of staff with a $440 million fortune made on the backs of companies that exploited ordinary Americans who are suffering right now, today, under your leadership, who sat on the boards of big tech companies who have been infiltrated by the state in order to prevent people crying out in pain that this administration caused, and that is celebrating that pain through the appointment of one of the victors of this misery-causing war waged on American people. The jump reflects an increase of 12 percentage points compared to 2021 and marks the highest year-to-year increase in Americans delaying healthcare, including evaluations, treatments and procedures, since Gallup began conducting polls in 2001. Gallup can't even compare this to anything, and they're in the business of making comparisons. When you add to that the number of medical appointments missed during the pandemic, the inability of people to gain access to the care, the poverty it caused, the crushing and collapse of small businesses in favour of who? Big tech? Big healthcare? Where does all this money come from? When someone creates a fortune of $440 million, when big tech bloats to the size that it has done, that money is coming from somewhere. Do you want to know where it comes from? Check your bank account. Check your ability to tend to your own healthcare crisis. Let us know in the chat and comments what suffering you have endured as a result of this profiteering. And do you know who's caused all of this? Well, you thought it was big tech. You thought it was big pharma. You thought it was an inept government that operates in cahoots with them. It was actually the unvaccinated.
You're looking at a winter of severe illness and death.
Moderna's CEO has announced that the firm is considering pricing its COVID-19 vaccine somewhere between $100 and $130 per dose in the United States. The upper end of that range, according to the People's Vaccine Alliance, would represent a 4,000% markup above the cost of manufacturing the shot, which experts have pegged at roughly $2.85 per dose. Oh, look at Big Pharma, they're getting such a beatdown. How do they make all these profits? Well, what we do is we make something for $3, and then we sell it for between $100 and $130 to the suffering people. Yeah, that's right. And then at bedtime, just lay my head down, straight to sleep on a pile of money. In 2020, Moderna admitted that 100% of the funding for its vaccine development program came from the federal government. Yeah, but only 100%. Only all of it was paid for by the taxpayer, so obviously we're going to profit. Obviously we're going to charge 4,000% more. Oh, hey, that seems like too much. Someone should talk to the chief of staff in the White House. Hey, chief of staff, Moderna, they're charging too much. Oh, it's you. Which, despite its leverage, has refused to force the company to share its vaccine recipe with the world. However you look at this, there's a way of regarding it as misanthropic profiteering, because even if you want to look at this as the Moderna vaccine works, and let me tell you, there's some evidence to suggest that at least the booster shot, we'll be talking about that later. Why wouldn't you share it? The only mentality and system of analysis that works is this. They're doing it all for profit. If it isn't profitable, they won't do it. When there is dissent against it, they shut it down. They appoint people in government positions that will not oppose it or represent people. Both Democratic parties are funded to some degree by the interest that they ought be opposing on behalf of the people, and the media support them in this grim, shadowy enterprise. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the chat and the comments. Remember, turn on the notification bell. We ain't got sponsorship from Big Pharma. We got you. I hope you have our backs as well. If you don't subscribe yet, subscribe right now. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these, but more important than any of that, please stay free.